specialist physiotherapist and the founder of the Pelvic Power Movement. Today we are going to talk about how sitting is really detrimental to the pelvic floor. Unfortunately, modern day life requires us to do a lot of sitting, but this is having a negative impact on the pelvic floor, those muscles. It can increase the incidence of incontinence and prolapse. So let's have a look at this in a little bit more detail so we can understand really why that could be. When we sit down, whether it be at a desk or even worse, probably is a sofa, we're putting a lot of compression to that pelvic floor and keeping that pelvic floor in a static position. If we're sitting on a sofa particularly, we're going to tip that pelvis into a posterior tilt. When we tip the pelvis posteriorly, the muscles relax, and we put a lot of pressure on the lumbar spine. We are compressing the upper part of their body. When we tip our pelvis back, we tend often to slump down. So our shoulders come forward, there's no engagement in our abdomen, and all the intra-abdominal pressure is going down into that pelvic bowl. If we're sitting at a chair or a desk, we have a similar sort of problem, unless you're particularly aware of your posture. In that case, maybe you are sitting up straight. But for many people that I see, they are sat for such extended periods that their body struggles to maintain a good posture in that sitting desk position. Our arms are hunched forward, maybe at a computer, looking at a screen, or maybe over some paper working. And once again, we're adopting that rounded posterior tilt, so rounded lumbar spine and forward flexion and rounding of the upper spine. Once again, compressing downwards onto that pelvic bowl. So for some people who do experience prolapse symptoms, they may feel worse after a long day of sitting. And why is that? Because they've spent the entire day just compressing the organs. If we're breathing down into that belly with every breath, we're getting an increased pressure through those pelvic organs. When we sit, we're very static. So your poor pelvic floor isn't getting any exercise. It's lacking in oxygen, in blood flow, and it's lacking in nutrients. We then stand up and we go off to do our daily activities. For some, it may just be emptying the dishwasher, doing some housework. For others, it may be going to the gym. But one hasn't primed their pelvic floor. So think of your pelvic floor a bit like a bit of blue tack. If the blue tack is hard and solid and cold and you try and stretch it, it's not going to be very malleable. A bit like if your bicep was constantly contracted in this position and you then try to straighten it, it's going to be stiff and painful, and it's not going to be as dynamic as maybe you'd hoped it would be. It definitely is not going to respond with enthusiasm to whatever activity you give it to do. So really think about how you're treating your pelvic floor throughout the day. What can you do to help your pelvic floor if, for instance, you have a job that requires extended periods of sitting? Well, think about changing your position regularly. So we have lots of different chairs. There are kneeling chairs now. You can have a standing table. You may sit on a ball, one of those large Swiss balls, changing the height of your chair, maybe kneeling down on one knee, just mixing that up so the pelvic floor isn't stuck in the same position for hours on end, for days and days. Think about getting up every 20 minutes from your desk and having a stroll around, maybe doing a few squats, a few lunges, maybe stretching your hamstrings. Just allow that pelvic floor to breathe a little. You may like to think about some pelvic floor relaxation exercises from nice deep belly breaths. If you can at lunchtime, get out and have a walk. Walking is a great form of exercise for your pelvic floor. It allows your pelvic floor to stretch, to strengthen, to breathe. And it will really help that pelvic floor be nice and soft and malleable for you. So think about your day. How are you sitting? What exercise are you doing? We need to treat our pelvic floor well if we want it to be responsive, we want it to be strong and active when we need it. We can't expect it to be dynamic if it's been sat down all day waiting for a chance to move. Hope that's been helpful. If you'd like any more help, please do join us over in our Facebook community at the Pelvic Power Movement community. Take care.